this is my experience just again this week. Had in a conference with well, because I'm sick, I get to see um, health specialists, and a lot of them just talk about, what do you need to help you get through and all that sort of thing. But some of them, well, all of them are obviously aware that death is kind of lingering, very hanging around very close. And the goal is to stop you from dying. But it's an impossible task. I mean,
Mm.
it's on the cards, whatever way, whether you like it or not.
100%
Death,
failure, mate.
yeah. And the only hope is a resurrection after death. But anyway, it comes down very uh, easily to talking about like how I feel about it. Anyway, I had an opportunity just to talk to a health professional about what do you think? How do you visualize God? Do you think of him as another person, but so much bigger, almighty and all powerful and all knowing and omnipresent and all the rest of it, as but still as a being that stands opposite and kind of we have to relate to them. And I said, that's sort of one picture, but it's not the whole picture because um, when when Paul was talking about the universe and our relationship with God, he said that in him we live and move, in him we have our being.
Mm.
That, or rather, the whole universe is in God. And the only way I can think about it is that we can use our imagination and create something, whatever you like. You can create a, a meal and you picture it in your mind ahead of time and think of the ingredients and how you're going to prepare it and how you're going to present it. And so you could have the plate there and it could have a steak on it and eggs and maybe potato fries and
Something green.
fried. So you can create in your mind this dish, whatever it might be, and that that creativity is because we're made in the image of God, and that verse that says, "In Him we live and move, in Him we exist," it conjures up for me the idea that the whole universe is an idea in the mind of God.
Mm.
That He started thinking about it and putting it together, and He's holding it there, which is, of course, in Colossians, it talks about in Jesus everything consists. At the start of Hebrews, it says he upholds the universe by his word of power. And so I went through this with a health professional, and the lady saw it. She could see it as really something new, a different way of kind of understanding God. And then I said, well, and God's revealed himself that he has every single thing in creation in his mind. And because it's in his mind and he's thinking about it, that's how we exist. That's why we have our being. and, uh, and he does that because he wants to create human beings like us, made in his image, to be kind of in a relationship with him forever. He really does love us, and he knows us better than we know ourselves. It's his knowing of us that 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 makes us who we are, and what he wants out of us, each one of us, wants a response to accept that he's got this love for us and this desire to keep us in existence as one of his children in a family where we can interact and be part of him. And anyway, I was waxing eloquent, I think, and doing my best to explain it. And this lady was understanding it. And I was able to kind of, there was a picture on the wall, and it was a scene of a beach scene. And there was a man and a woman and a little child holding hands, looking out to sea. And the, the, the painting or photograph was kind of looking from behind. And I said, look, it's all part of God's plan. For a little while, for a long while, I've been like that family standing there on the beach, and I've been important to God, of course, in the first place, but important to my partner, my children, my friends, been important as part of the world that represented there, and enjoying the world, the big picture of everything, the lovely way that uh, just nature works together. And it's been great. I've really loved it. But the whole point is not to stay here, but to enjoy and live that, but to come to know God, like Jesus said. This is eternal life, to know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you've sent. And it was kind of a beautiful opportunity just to say so. I've fulfilled my purpose, and I know that I've come to know God. I've accepted Christ as the revelation from God that reveals all this to us. And I'm sure that by his death and resurrection, the whole thing's been verified, validated, and I've got no doubts whatsoever that I'm part of God's thoughts, not in the past, but in the future, forever and ever, in the love that he has for us. And in a very short while, I'm just going to become like one of the grains of sand on the beach where they're standing, having done my bit in my time, and then just becoming nothing as far as this world is concerned, except like that sand, one single grain. But eternal significance is already achieved in Jesus because I'm part of the family of God. Anyway, she started crying. It was just lovely to use the whole process of life and death as a way of presenting the bigger picture of what's happening. And it's really attractive to people. It's if they properly understand it, only a fool would reject Christ. It'd be, yeah, it's counter every intelligence, reason, feeling that we can generate to reject a God like the God of the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. So yes, Lucas, reach out, try everything, get the message out there, but we've got to get it out there, and it's got to be not just that. Look how look how happy we are and how Christ has made a difference. But we really have to explain it, and explain it in a beyond Sunday school. It's got to be sophisticated enough so that they can see the profundity of our situation as human beings. So I 100% for you, reaching out.
In that message that
Explain.
you're talking about, you sort of talked about sort of God's, that sort of big story of what God's doing and his love for us, and that picture of God thinking us up. Obviously in there it's implied that we've got to respond to that love. But one aspect of the story that I've been thinking a bit about is that we do also have to align ourselves with what God's priorities are and how he sees the world works best. I know we've talked a lot in the past about the thing that keeps a lot of people from the kingdom is not that they've thought it through and it doesn't make sense, but more that they want to be the ones who sort of rule their lives and make decisions about their life. They don't want to surrender that to anyone else.
Yeah.
What do you see as sort of I feel like that's a battle in the world that we live in today, where people might see the truth of God's kingdom and Jesus and what he's done for us, and they really like that idea of God's love for us, but they still want to live life on their own terms.
Yeah. That's ultimately what sin is all about, and it's what caused the trouble in the world. I've been thinking lately, once upon a time, people really feared hell. They feared judgment, and they had a deep sense that judgment was inevitable, that you can't live in a moral universe and break its laws and get away scot-free. Somebody has to pay. And what I just reading in John chapter 12, where Jesus, it says, he cried aloud, when a man believes in me, he believes not in me, but in the one who sent me. Seeing me, he sees him who sent me. I've come into the world as light, that no one with faith in me should walk in the dark. If anyone hears my words and pays no regard to them, I am not his judge. There is a judge for the man who rejects me and doesn't regard my words or doesn't accept my words. The word that I have spoken will be his judge on the last day, or something rather like that. And yeah, he said in there, I didn't come into the world to judge the world, but to save the world. But there is a judge for the man who rejects me and doesn't accept my word. The word that I have spoken will be his judge on the last day. And it's I think realizing that we're accountable, we just are. And the deepest part of our conscience will tell us that we are, that there comes a time when we just have to pay up. And maybe there's a need once more to remind people what it is to miss out on this salvation, that the consequences of rejecting Christ are fearful, really fearful. I've probably, somewhere in there, I think we have convinced the world that God is so loving and kind, and that there is already a kind of a redemption, that Christ did die for the sin of the world, and that sin is no longer an issue. Uh, well, it is still an issue unless you accept the forgiveness that God offers through Christ. And I know it's probably very, very unpopular, and people don't want to be reminded, but I think it's the truth that there is accountability coming, and people just have to be told, reminded, and face the fact that the choice really is between life and death, eternal life and eternal death.
How would you remind people of that, that judgment is coming and that there is an accountability, that people are going to be called to account?
Uh, I'm guilty because just thinking back on 3 or 4 days ago when I was talking to that health professional, I didn't give the warning. I gave the appeal, and I made it clear about the love of God. And she just admired that this was such a beautiful way to feel about the end of life.
Hmm.
And I guess I just took it for granted that there'd be a recognition that there's an alternative, and the alternative isn't nice. That if you die without Christ, that uh, you're left in, well, bitterness, sometimes turmoil at the very least, um, feeling of huge loss instead of an ongoing desire to uh, and confidence in life itself. Uh, I passed all that on, but I didn't give a warning. And I think it probably comes down to us being a little bit intimidated, or feeling like somehow that we are being too offensive if we say, well, if you don't receive Christ, you're going to hell, even though maybe we don't even believe it anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm trying to remind myself, even about my own grandchildren, that they need to be told that there's a fearful judgment yet to come.
Hmm.
Yeah. So maybe we just need to believe it ourselves first in order to talk about it more freely.
Hmm. I mean, there is a part of it that that judgment is um, it's a it's an outworking of decisions that people have already made, where a human being who wants to live on their own terms and independent of the creator and independent of the accountability of the creator, you are just separating yourself from God's life.
Yeah.
And the ultimate expression of that is hell, really, isn't it?
Been uh, just uh, for the last couple of weeks reading backwards and forwards in Matthew's Gospel, and reading the the what do they call it, the Olivet Discourse, the talk about the end of the world, and where it says Jesus said at one stage that uh, there's going to be disturbances, cosmic disturbances, and that, quote, men's hearts will fail them for fear of what is coming on the world. And I think everybody looking around can see that this that that our world has failed to be like we've got all the technical and the 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 structural, whether it's finance or civic or uh, entertainment or education, everything in the world has been thought through and developed until we've got a system that should make us all happy, should make us all free, should make us all content. But like the level of drug use to find some other way of feeling like life is worth living by getting into some psychedelic realm because you've damaged your brain. Um, and then the corruption that's in the world in government and uh, the way the whole economic system is skewed so that there are people richer than nations who are able to call the shots. And I don't know whether you read about it, but Tommy Robertson is an English activist who's been simply trying to assert that the Brits have a culture and that immigrants coming in should assimilate to that culture. And he organised a rally in Trafalgar Square in London, where they were just accepting migrants and welcoming them if they want to share the British way of life, but telling them that if they would come bringing a different culture, that they're not wanted and that the government should be doing something to assimilate the people that have already come in. Anyway, he's arrested on charges of terrorism and put in prison, even though there are, I don't know how many thousands. Trafalgar Square was filled for a day on, when was it? Would have been Sunday, I suppose. Yeah. Just that what has been set up, like the justice system in England, is being controlled by people who misuse it for ideological propaganda, I suppose, or forcing a a change in a whole nation away from a Christian-based Western civilization into something that's new, like Kamala Harris says. What is it? To accept a future that is free from the past or something rather, uncontrolled by the past.
Yeah.
And changes that are happening in traditional cultures and being kind of organized and controlled and established by just a few who are leaving God out of the picture, leaving even the Christian religion out of the picture. The world seems like it's becoming less and less safe for ordinary people wanting to live ordinary lives and raise their children and have an ordinary job and be an ordinary family. It's kind of like at the Olympic Games in France, where they put the parody of the Lord's Supper up to represent trans people and asserting their right to be considered normal like everybody else. Um, just it's getting a dangerous world. Uh, to raise a family in the old way is under threat. So that I don't know, maybe it's just like Jesus said, people will become uh, really worried about what's coming on the world. Uh, and I mean, there's no surprises whatsoever if you read what has been prophesied in the whole tradition of the Christian, the prophets of Israel, and then the apostles of the Lord Jesus speaking how the world is going to become more and more under the control of spiritual forces that are opposed to God and to all goodness. So that maybe there's going to be I don't know, uh, men's hearts failing them for fear of what's coming on the world and turning uh, with relief to hear that evil is going to be judged and that there's an escape for those who put their trust in God's love that's been revealed to us through Jesus. Uh, Maybe that's just the hopefulness of an optimist. But I think otherwise, the world, um, it does look pretty pessimistic in as far as goodness is concerned. You must feel it at school where the kids are being allowed, where they're not given the discipline that they need to control their um, individuality, their sexuality, their curiosity, even, and help to direct all of that towards finding truth and living by it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel very frustrated by kids who just want to do whatever they want to do. They
yeah,
just want to live on their own agenda. And it's very hard to work with them in groups because they're just distracted all the time and just want to do whatever they want.
yeah,
It's very hard to, it's hard to get them to read a novel. It's hard to get them to sit down and want to do something. It's hard to get them
yeah,
to follow through and complete work. Yeah, it's very frustrating. And then you pretty much don't really have much power at all to discipline them. Yeah, it's a tricky. The expectations of teachers are very high, but the actual reality of the tools that you've got are fairly limited. And the kids are, yeah, I don't know, they just feel like they're struggling to, oh, they're struggling to find purpose and meaning and any kind of direction for some of them. And there's so much brokenness and trauma in the background. Like they're coming from homes that are difficult, like homes that they've worked out sort of this philosophy of do what you want, where, lots of kids coming from homes where parents don't offer them really much guidance about who or what they should be and let them do whatever they want, but also homes that are impacted by, choices of the parents and relationships that are broken down.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an
So we've
interesting.
got this fantastic civilization with all these fantastic insights into the best way to educate, the best way to organize our commerce, our economies. Um, we've just achieved such such success in how it is best to live, and people just don't want to do it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that looks in 50 years' time. But maybe that's a tremendous opportunity for believers to be pockets of light and hope in those places. I mean, you look at, lots of families are flocking to the independent schools, the Christian schools, and the church
Yeah,
school
yeah.
because they've got some kind of moral compass and yeah,
I suppose I'm just being pessimistic. Uh, there's always been scoundrels, and the world was run by mostly emperors who were just self-indulgent and
yeah,
exploited their power and absorbed the riches for their own extravagances.
that was the
And
expected norm.
yeah, and huh, and still the Spirit of God worked, I think, not just in Christian world, Christian part of the world, but everywhere to um, affirm goodness and yeah, bring light to into darkness. Um, Probably right down at the level of uh, ordinary life, where a man and a woman really do love each other, and they really do love the children that they have, and they really do want what's good for them, and they'll work and sacrifice and do all kinds of godly things in order to bring their family up into a good life. So, yeah,
One of Rodney Stark's arguments in his book, I can't remember the name of it now.
the victory of reason.
No, another one that you gave me about Christianity. Basically, he says that one of his arguments is that women uh, made a huge difference in the empire. So, because of infanticide, uh, lots of the Roman world were leaving girls out to die and just keeping the boys. And so there was a shortage of women. The Christians didn't do that. And so there's lots of Christian women who are available. They then married lots of the Roman guys who weren't Christians and they won them over to faith and they brought up their kids with faith. Um, yeah, and it helped transform the empire.
Yeah, the Christians used to actually go and pick up the abandoned kids, babies, and
Yeah,
raise them.
and there were a lot
Yeah,
of most of them were girls. Yeah,
yeah. Ha,
and the Christians also gave much more rights to their women as well.
yeah,
Had a lot more freedoms. They had, I mean, obviously the whole Christian faith offered a lot more opportunity to contribute as part of a fellowship and to play
yeah.
a part.
That's right. So, really, it's um, probably in the spirit of evil has always been part of our civilizations, and the work of goodness has always been a fairly individual thing,
Mm,
coming down to ordinary people and ordinary families.
mm.
It's just a pity to see it being. Maybe it's because our communication now is just so worldwide and so instant. We see the worst side of everything as soon
Yeah,
as it happens,
yeah.
and
But we're probably not seeing those instances of just ordinary people being really faithful to the truth and the difference that
yeah,
makes in their everyday lives.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's probably, we've run out of time, so we'll have to finish it
Oh,
up there.
Hey, what are we going to do? I've um I didn't know whether to kind of think through something or other specifically or not. Uh, um, so do you have any suggestions?
Um, well, I mean, do you want to do some stuff on Matthew?
Um, yeah, yeah. All right, I'll read through Matthew again. And
We go from the beginning or just do selected passages?
how about if we start from the beginning and then are you free to start reading through Matthew again?
Yeah, I'd love
All
to.
right. All right. Let's and we'll share what at the end of the week on Tuesday when we talk together, we'll
Yep,
have been reading for a week.
yep,
And I'm pretty like I'll read sometimes I'll read 4 or 5 chapters, and other times I'll be stuck on 4 or 5 verses, just
yep,
the thoughts that come. So maybe we could share together. You share what has kind of impressed you and that God has spoken to you personally, and I'll
yep.
do the same.
Okay, great.
Which